Hey guys, Gordon Cockerpunk Transducer here. Coming with, it's actually been a really long time since we did one of these, which is why I'm excited to actually do one here. An Old Guns tour stop. Mostly the reason why there hasn't been any updates is because I've been too broke to buy new guns. I'm in my last semester of college here, and I'm a little broke, so, but I did end up trading a gun for this one right here, and I've been looking for one of these for a long time, a nice one, because they're really uncommon in terms of, most people don't even know they existed. This is a Aero Precision Sovereign. So anyway, this model in particular is right feed, obviously. I have it just set up with a bottom line on my 45-45. And it feels a lot like an autococker, mostly because it is one. So we know that the autococker comes from the sniper pump gun, right? So you have a sniper pump gun that in about 1990, 1991, Bud Orr slapped some pneumatics on and called it the autococker, and ever since then it's been the autococker. Well, there were several other pump guns at the time, some of them being Nelson valve guns like the Phantom. Those don't particularly make very good semi-automatic guns because the clip system that latches the hammer to the bolt doesn't work very well at high speed. There were some things called auto tracer kits or chameleon kits that you could actually make an autococker out of a Nelson valve gun. But they never really took off in the same way the autococker did for the reason I mentioned. There was a slight resurgence in that gun design with the Rainmaker, which is another gun I'd love to get on the show, in an electro-pneumatic variety, which is the reason why I love Rainmakers. But then there was this weird hybrid between Nelson valves and Sheridan-style valves like the Sniper, almost like the same way we have the rift between spool valve guns and poppet valve guns today. There was the Nelson guys versus the Sheridan guys, and now that argument is perpetuated to Phantom versus Sniper. Anyway, there was a weird hybrid between the two, and it was called a pump gun called the Sterling, which essentially has a Nelson valve in the bottom tube, and then instead of using the bolt as what the hammer latches onto, it has a carrier system. It has a carrier kind of mechanism there on the end of the pump handle, and then it has an independent pump rod that comes around and actuates the bolt. So it's almost like a stacked tube Nelson valve gun. And Sterlings, while being smaller in popularity than both Nelson valve guns and Sheridan valve guns, are great guns, and to this day they're great guns. I'd love to get one on the show to review, but again, I'm broke. So Sterlings didn't make it into the semi-automatic realm the same way automags, autocockers, the PMI 3s, the VM68s, those kind of guns pushed into the semi-automatic world in the early 90s. The Sterling never did until the late 90s, actually, which, in my opinion, makes this gun a first-generation semi-automatic gun. Even though it came out in 1999 or so. Essentially what this is an autocockered Sterling. So it no longer, however, sports the Nelson valve in the bottom. In the bottom tube, we have a system very similar to an autococker. It's essentially a Sheridan. You can see it does have a back block cycling here, and actually this weird tube thing off the back is a beaver tail, essentially. So autocockers were tournament illegal because you could, it was called thumbing the cocking rod. You can get the hammer to hit the valve at really high speed if you stick your thumb on it and push it forward. And this was to prevent that on the Sterling, because this cocking rod, cocking rod right here is attached to the hammer the same way an autococker's is. Now, if we look at this side, though, we can look at this and we know it's an autococker, right? So you look at this, okay, there's an LPR, check, autococker's got one. There's a three-way, check, autococker's got one. And then you're like, well, where's the ram and pump arm? Well, through a very clever bit of design work, the guys at Aero included the RAM system. Let me pull this out for you. The RAM system is actually part of the bolt on this gun, which I think is a great idea. Different solution than like the Blazer, where they just slap the RAM on the side of the gun. This one actually, the bolt, or the bolt is the RAM, essentially, which cuts down on the number of parts and the number of external parts that float around and cause people problems, because for some reason people can't perform basic maintenance on their guns, things of this nature. Anyway, so the Sterling, yeah, obviously, this has got Palmer's regs on it, both of them, and shoots really well, actually. The trigger, as you can see, has the three-way mounted right here. It also releases a sear, just the same as an autococker trigger, and it's actually pretty smooth. It has this plastic 45 frame, which has this weird cut. I've never figured out what this cut is, because the early Sterlings had this too. I'm not really sure what... It's not uncomfortable, but it's not terribly comfortable. I'm not really sure what they were going for with that. But it does have a couple of trigger slop screws to adjust the trigger to make sure it's nice and slidey. And it does have a nice trigger pull for an autococker. Not as good as, say, my Merlin or some really well-tuned autocockers, but it does have a decent trigger, and it definitely comes out of the British mentality of a long, smooth, sustained firing trigger. In the autococker days, in the heydays, in the late 90s there's pretty much two styles of triggers. There was the ShockTech guys, the ShockTech guys have super light, super short triggers. And those guns were made for gunfighting, so they're made for, you know, that was a gunfighter's gun, whereas most of the British autocockers, so like Bell Sails, Planet Eclipse, back then they were just Eclipse, those kind of guys had guns that were made for sustained shooting, so they had much longer trigger pulls that were actually smoother in most cases. This gun falls into that second category. Pretty long, but very smooth trigger pull. I personally don't like the right feed. Never liked right feed guns, but that's what this one was. Another interesting, curious thing about this gun is it has, first off, it doesn't have Sterling threads, nor does it have autococker threads. I don't know what threads these are. I think they're just Sterling threads with a shorter shank. Sterling threads have a kind of a long shank here. Let me see if I can get this off for you. But this is actually, when I first got this, I thought this brass piece here was a barrel adapter and that this was an autococker threaded barrel. This is actually just a little, it's like a back to like a stiffy kit. It's only about an inch long in bore, but this is a 683 bore and this is a 690 bore, so it actually shoots modern paint relatively well. They don't roll out, and it doesn't do too bad with modern paint. So that's an interesting thing, I guess, that someone came up with that. It almost looks like it was hand machined, that it wasn't even a production item. The internal bore on it is not that smooth. Definitely not a mirror finish, but doesn't affect accuracy because it shoots really well, and as we would expect from all the Punkworks testing. But, in any way, the cool thing about this old school gun tour is actually, I can tell you, if you want to buy one of these, you can actually still buy these. If you go to Aero Precision's website, I'm not sure if it's, I think it might be aeroprecision.uk or something like that. If you just search Aero Precision, I'm sure you can find it. You can actually buy Sovereign 3s. I think this is a Sovereign 1. It might be a Sovereign 2. I guess I don't even really know the difference. But the Sovereign 3s are vertical feed, which is nice. Which, that alone would be a reason to buy a Sovereign 3. So, in conclusion, I guess, it's not going to be taking any playtime away from my Merlin or my RT Automag, but it certainly is a fun little gun to shoot. Just, you know, you get weird looks for shooting autocockers at fields. you get even weirder looks shooting guns like these at fields. So, anyway, I like the gun, and I'm going to definitely be holding on to this one for a while, which means, unless I find a new source of funding, no more old guns tours for a while, but hopefully that'll change when I get a job. So, anyway, nice gun, nice shooting gun, first generation first generation semi-automatic gun that fares pretty well these days. It's nice smooth trigger, good shooting gun, shoots identical to an autococker essentially. Anyway, yeah, talk to you guys later.